Welcome, everybody, to Survive in Advance on the Gruely Crew Sports Network. Survive in Advance is the greatest show on earth, is what I heard. That's what somebody posted the other day. And it's because I'm your co-host, Mike Goodpaster, and mostly because we have a Hall of Famer here. Former Indiana basketball star. Started on a 1981 team with Isaiah Thomas, where they combined for 26 points. And Steve got 5 of those. And you can't undersell that, because without those 5 points, Indiana only wins 58-50. Help me welcome to the show, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Doing great today, Mike. How you doing? And, Mike, I got to say, that's encouraging news, what you said about somebody posted it's the greatest show on earth. You know what that tells me? That I'm an effective teacher, because I have taught my wife how to post on the website.
Actually, the post was from you, but all right.
Oh, was it from? Well, she put it under she used my Facebook page. Dadgummit. I told her to use her own.
So we are going over to college football today, and then the NFL fleecing of teams and cities. And we'll start off college football. So I know you've got some predictions for tomorrow's top 6 teams or so. What do those predictions say that you've looked into today?
Well, right now they're saying, obviously, Alabama sits at number 1. The Tide returns to Atlanta to play Georgia. It won't be easy, but Alabama's a strong favorite. Clemson, only 7-5 pitch teams in the way of another CFP football semifinal appearance. Notre Dame, 12-0, without a conference title game. The Irish should be safely in the CFP field. They can't screw up anymore. And, you know, that was a big breath, because when that game started, I don't know if you watched that game, but I'm sitting out here watching. I'm going, oh, my God, they are going to lose this, because USC is playing out of their mind, and Notre Dame is coming out like they had this game won, and they're already thinking about who they're going to play in the first round of the playoffs. Now, fortunately, Notre Dame woke up enough, and Ian Book, you know, had a career day. But at the beginning, it was so typical. This is Notre Dame. They're going to piss it away on the very last 40 minutes of football, or however long they play in college football, 60 minutes. And then they've got Georgia. But, you know, then they've got Ohio State up to number 5 in the prediction. So they're saying that Ohio State will jump to number 5, which I don't know. We'll debate that here in a minute. They got Oklahoma number 6. I think beyond number 6, I think that unless catastrophe happens to Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia, well, Georgia would be locked in if Alabama. Then you have to worry about whether Alabama stays or not in the top 4, even if they lose to Georgia, which they probably will. I don't think you can go down below past number 6 and anybody has a legitimate shot to make it. I think Michigan's out, really. You know, they've lost to both teams that are in contention. They've lost to both of them already. I think that works against them in a huge way. UCF, number 8, comes in at number 8, but I just think losing their quarterback gives everybody reason to eliminate them.
Yeah,
you know, they're still going to come in probably undefeated.
Should it?
No, it shouldn't, but it will. I mean, you know, you get into the situation where you have – this is what's the problem with the 4 teams, Mike, is that you have more teams than spots. So what you start doing is, it's like when I was in a hiring sequence with Pfizer, I would have 5 candidates for 2 slots. So what do I start doing? I start finding reasons to eliminate people, because I'm saying I can take any one of these 5 candidates and be successful with them. They're all great, but I've only got 2 slots. So now I've got to find reasons to eliminate 3 of these candidates, because I no longer can put them. They're all on even plane as far as talent and ability, but now I've got to eliminate 3. So what is the knockout factor of all 5 of these teams, and what's the worst knockout factor? Them being not necessarily a Power 5 conference and losing their starting quarterback, it's a death blow to them. Sadly, it is. It shouldn't be.
But in their defense, they played better. They beat South Florida worse in the second half with their backup quarterback.
Sure.
Their defense, which was the question, only gave up 10 points after only giving up 13 last week to the University of Cincinnati. And Cincinnati and South Florida, while they're not top 20 programs, both teams have been in the top 25 this year, and both teams are good. So I think this. Ohio State and Oklahoma could both lose this weekend. It's probably not going to happen, but it could happen.
Oklahoma's in more jeopardy. I mean, Texas, that's a big rivalry game with Texas.
I think Ohio State is in huge jeopardy. I think Northwestern is better than what people think. And I also think this. In the NFL, if a team goes out and has a huge game, you know, a rivalry game like Ohio State did against Michigan, they win that game, you got to get ready to play Northwestern by yesterday or Sunday. I think this. Northwestern has had a couple weeks to prepare. They probably had a coach preparing for Michigan and a coach preparing for Ohio State. And I think in the end, I think Northwestern's very well coached. I think they've got a quarterback that could someday play in the NFL. I think this is a very dangerous game for Ohio State. You know, it's not that far away from Evanston, Illinois, to go to Indianapolis, so there are going to be some Northwestern fans.
Or Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, but it's farther probably to go to Columbus. But this is the thing.
No, it's really not. You cannot make both drives to Columbus and to Chicago. They're both the same mileage either way.
Chicago's only a couple hours. Columbus is longer than a couple hours.
Depends on how you drive. I've made it to Columbus and London 2.5 hours.
But if you're a decent, law-abiding citizen, it's a 3.5, 4-hour drive from Indianapolis.
Just watch out for London, Ohio. I got stopped there twice.
Well,
and taken to a nursing home to pay my ticket.
Okay. We'll let that go. But I think
I had to pay cash.
I
never got a
teams are in
receipt or a
danger.
ticket.
How about this? Notre Dame's undefeated. They don't have the greatest resume of teams they've beaten now, especially since Michigan lost. What if Alabama loses by 3 to Georgia? They put both of them in, and then you got Clemson. Ohio State and Oklahoma both have better wins this year. They don't have the loss, but than Notre Dame.
No, Notre Dame's not. Notre Dame, I tell you, the two locks in this thing right now, because it's Notre Dame and Alabama. They're not going to be out of the top four.
See, I completely disagree. Clemson is a lock.
I don't.
Clemson
it's the marketing. Mike, let's look at the NCAA.
I don't care about marketing because I don't think I don't think you understand this, Steve. Steve, you're also the same person that thinks the name Indiana basketball still carries relevance. It doesn't compared to what it did 20 years ago. Neither does Notre Dame. And I can guarantee you this.
Too.
No, I'm telling you this, Steve. I guarantee you Ohio State has a bigger fan base than Notre Dame.
No way.
Okay.
No way.
But you're wrong.
No.
If you look at the ratings on Ohio State games compared to Notre Dame games, Ohio State brings in more people to watch TV.
I would totally disagree with that. Pull those numbers up. Because you can't, because Ohio State doesn't play on national TV every week. Notre Dame does.
Wait a second. Ohio State does. Can you give me one game Ohio State played this year that was not on the Big Ten
I'm
Network?
sure they played on the Big Ten Network a couple times this year. I think I watched the game on the Big Ten Network.
Yeah, that's because they get paid out the ass to play on the Big Ten Network.
Well, but that's not a national. Well, it is national, but
not
it's
national.
Regional cable channel. No. Mike, no way. Notre Dame is the number one draw of anything. That's why they go to major bowl games every year.
They're not. Alabama is the number one draw.
Alabama is, and then Notre Dame is right there with.
No.
I'm telling you, Alabama cannot drop out, even if they lose, unless they got blistered. I don't even think they can drop out then. I think Alabama and Notre Dame are locked now into the top four. Clemson and Georgia are at risk. If Clemson loses, they're out.
All right, how
They'll
about
drop
this?
Below 4.
How about this? The TV ratings for Ohio State, Michigan at noon on a network, they had an overnight average of 28.7. The prime time, what was it, an ABC game between Notre Dame and USC did half of that.
Sure, yeah.
So how is Notre Dame a bigger draw? Because Notre Dame's playing.
Because most people go out
wait a second. I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this, Steve. You cannot justify a primetime 8 o'clock Saturday night game drawing a bigger rating than a noon game on a Saturday afternoon.
Mike, I was conflicted on the Notre Dame because there was a rerun of Keeping Up with the Kardashians on, and I didn't know what. I flipped back and forth.
But you know what? In 1978, no Notre Dame fan would have even considered watching anything other than Notre Dame. And no Notre Dame fan would have considered going out on a Saturday night when Notre Dame's playing USC. It's not what it once was.
Most people go to bars and watch it, and where it's not counted on the ratings and things like that. You got 1 million people watching off of one television. You're not ever going to convince me on that argument. No. I mean, I know Ohio State's got a great fan base, but it's a regional fan base for the most part.
It is?
Notre Dame is a national fan base.
Give me a break. Notre Dame's a national fan base.
Yeah, I mean the Coliseum was pretty well full.
Win.
Half the people there were Notre Dame. They were in gold, green, or blue. Half were in red and orange, or red and yellow.
Huh?
I mean, the stadium was about 50-50 in Los
because
Angeles.
You know what? That's the amount of people that usually go to USC games when they're not really good.
And the stadium's not full. Notre Dame shows up and it fills up.
Yeah. So I guarantee you this. If Ohio State showed up, it would be filled up.
Well,
you don't think
relatively
it would?
so, sure. This year it would because Ohio State's a relevant team.
They're a relevant team every year, Steve. Notre Dame's not.
Ohio State hasn't been a relevant team.
Really?
I mean, they've had their down periods.
They won the
too,
national championship, 2 years ago, but they're not relevant? I mean, last year, they beat USC in the Cotton Bowl. That was the down year for them. Notre Dame's playing in the freaking Independence Bowl when they make it.
Let's do this. Let's do this. Alabama. Is there a way for Alabama to get out of the top 4?
Yeah, get blown out by Georgia.
Okay. What's the score got to be?
3 or 4 touchdowns. At least 2 touchdowns.
You think if they get beat by 21 points, they're out of the top 4?
Yeah.
Didn't we have this a couple of years ago? Didn't they get killed by somebody late in the year and stayed in the top 4?
It was last year. They got beat by Auburn, but they didn't
they
play in the SEC
4.
championship game.
But they lost the game like the last game of the season or something. Then they kept them out of the championship game. So they didn't even play for the conference championship, and they stayed in the top 4. So you're telling me if they go to the championship game against Georgia, who's already in the top 4, lose to them by 2 or 3 touchdowns, they're out of the top 4? I think you're nuts.
So they're not going to lose no matter what?
They're not going to have the top 4.
Okay.
Alabama will stay. That's my opinion. Well, you dispute me on it.
I didn't. I just said if Georgia hands them their ass, they might be.
They might be, but okay, Clemson. What? How safe is Clemson? It's a dangerous team. You said that yourself.
It is not a dangerous team now. They haven't been. They were earlier in the season, but from what I saw last week, they got beat by Miami of Florida 24-0. I don't think they're a dangerous team. And also, when I looked it up last year, the Ohio State football program generated $86.1 million. Notre Dame generated 83. And Notre Dame has their own network, and Ohio State still generated more money.
Okay.
So, what else are you going to go by?
All right.
Okay.
I think I don't think that's an egregious number. I don't think that's accurate at all.
It's not accurate?
No,
the amount of money the program's
made. I can't validate that because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but where that number's coming from.
That's what they
and of that $83 million that Ohio State generated, they've got to split that among the entire athletic department, or the entire Big Ten part of it has to go to the Big Ten. Where Notre Dame makes they keep it all.
So everything Notre Dame makes.
Really, who's making more money?
Notre Dame as a program makes more money. So, Notre Dame has to give part of their money to the ACC. Did you know that?
Don't believe everything you read on the internet, Mike.
Okay. I won't believe the Wall Street Journal when it comes to money anymore. But go ahead.
Post it on the internet. So Clemson, if they lose, what happens to them?
They drop out.
They drop out. Okay. So there's one potential disaster. I don't think Alabama drops out even if they lose.
Well, Clemson's not going to lose. Alabama could lose. Georgia's a good team.
We're looking at all scenarios.
I think that what we're looking at, I think it's very possible you could have Alabama-Georgia even if Bama beats Georgia in a close game now, just according to what Oklahoma and Ohio State do. And the question then is this: which team would belong first, Ohio State or Clemson? Or Ohio State or Oklahoma?
All right, well, you're making the assumption with Clemson that if Clemson loses and Ohio State loses.
What was that now? Was that Ohio State or
Oklahoma? You're making an assumption that if Clemson loses and Ohio State loses.
Clemson's going to win. There's no assumption.
Then
the only
if
thing
Clemson
that's
wins, they're in.
is that. Yeah, Clemson's in.
All right,
then
they're
will
done.
be in.
Notre Dame can't lose, so they're in.
So you've got a fourth spot. Who does the fourth right now? Who should the fourth spot go to? Oklahoma or Ohio
Georgia
State?
right now.
It can't go to Georgia because Georgia's got to play Bama.
Okay,
so Georgia will.
You're going to assume Georgia's going to drop out.
They're out if they lose.
I agree.
So
then you're down to Oklahoma and Ohio State.
Let's assume Bama wins. Who has the better resume? Who should go, Oklahoma or Ohio State?
Ohio State.
Shit. Really?
No, I don't. I think I'm
No,
looking at it from a
just
marketing
defend
perspective.
it now. It's not a marketing because both programs are huge.
Mike, it is a marketing
And it's
perspective
not,
thing. When
because
you only have
both
4 teams in there,
programs
you're
are
trying to sell
huge.
advertising. It's the
Okay.
NCAA, Mike.
Okay.
Come on. We harp on them. We're doing nothing but marketing a year round, and now you're going to go religious on me?
It's not religious.
Now you're going to say it's all about football
Oklahoma.
with the NCAA? Seriously?
It's Oklahoma. It's not like we're comparing them to.
And that conference isn't
Virginia.
as strong as the Big Ten.
Oh, God.
You just said
really?
right now, Ohio
That
State
is
draws more
absolutely
fans.
ignorant. Oh, come on. The Big Ten is a joke this year, Steve. You got a 7-5 Northwestern team playing for the Big Ten championship. You got an Ohio State team whose biggest win is against Michigan. Michigan's biggest win is against who? Michigan's biggest game until this was getting their ass handed to them at Notre Dame at the start of the year. Michigan is a figment of people's imagination. They're a decent defensive team with no offense. I mean, when you look at this, and you want to really break this down, I mean, if you look at what these teams played, let's go through Oklahoma first. Oklahoma beat Iowa State at Iowa State. Iowa State's a top 25 team. They beat Army, who's 8-2 this year, 9-2. They lost a close game to Texas. Ohio State and this is the thing, Texas is ranked 14th, and they're going to play Texas again. Ohio State lost by 29 to a 6-6 Purdue team. You also look at Oklahoma, they go to TCU, they win. TCU's down, but they beat a really good Kansas State team, 51-14. They beat Oklahoma State, they beat Texas Tech, blew out Kansas, but they got a win over number 13 West Virginia. So you got a win over number 13 West Virginia. You got a win, a close loss to number 14. Iowa State will be top 20 this year. If we go look at Ohio State and see what this glorious Big Ten is, and I'm sorry, the fact that you would claim the Big Ten was any good at all blows my mind. Because you can't name me 3 good teams in the Big Ten, because there's not. The fact that Indiana almost went 500 this year will tell you how bad it is. Ohio State. This is what Ohio State's done. All right?
That's good. Touché.
Ohio State, at the start of the year, beats Oregon State, who won 2 games this year. They beat Rutgers, who won 2 games this year. They struggled with TCU and beat them. TCU's 4-8 this year. They beat Tulane. Whoop-de-doo. They beat Penn State by a point. Penn State ended up losing 3 or 4 games. They had trouble with Indiana. They struggled with Minnesota. They get blown out by Purdue. They beat Nebraska, who's below 500, by 5. They got a decent win against Michigan State, who's not a ranked team. They beat Maryland 52-51. This is how bad Maryland is. The week before, Maryland got beat by Indiana. And then they beat Michigan. So when I look at
Why
this,
are we picking on Indiana here?
because the Indiana's football program should probably be dropped to Division III or NAIA so they can compete. But when you look at it, Ohio State, they beat Michigan. I'm sorry, but when I look at Michigan, their biggest wins against Penn State, who lost to every good team they played. You know? So I don't buy the Michigan thing.
Mike, I agree with you entirely. If you're looking at it from a pure football perspective, the thing is, what you just argued against me against Notre Dame is going to come back and bite you in the ass. They outdraw everybody on TV, and they outdraw everybody in stadium filling.
Notre Dame doesn't.
No, Ohio State.
Okay, so you just agreed with me. So I was right before.
No, I don't agree with the numbers about Notre Dame in terms of what revenue they bring, and I still think Notre Dame overall has a bigger fan base across the country than Ohio State does. But given the fact that we're not above that right now, but we're assuming that both teams win.
All right, the other thing you got to remember is this. If you want TV ratings, nobody wants to see Notre Dame and Alabama because everybody knows what happens. Alabama beats the hell out of them. If Notre Dame,
Alabama's going to beat the hell out of everybody.
No, they won't. They don't. I mean, that was a team that was 10-10 with the Citadel not too long ago at halftime. So they're not unbeatable. And, I mean, Auburn hung with them until about mid-third quarter, and Auburn's not that good. They're not unbeatable. Georgia's going to give them a go this week. It wouldn't surprise me if Georgia nips them, because I think Georgia with Jake Fromm could do something. I think this, Oklahoma and Ohio State, I just think Oklahoma, their entire season as a whole, has been better than Ohio State's.
Agreed.
I think this. I think if the NCAA had their way, they would have Ohio State and Oklahoma both in over Notre Dame, because the last time Notre Dame was in a situation like this, they humiliated themselves. And they have not beaten a team this year where you would think that they wouldn't humiliate themselves again. This is a team that barely beats Ball State. They barely beat Vanderbilt. At least Oklahoma blows out the teams that aren't that good that they play. Ohio State, and I can't get past this, but Ohio State lost to Purdue by 29 points, Steve. That has to count for something. That's not a good Purdue team. They're 6-6. They beat Indiana by a touchdown so they could go play in the Ford Weed Eater Bowl or whatever the hell they're going to play in. So I'm telling you this. Notre Dame is not one of the 4 biggest programs in college football anymore. Not TV rating-wise, because when you look and match up their TV ratings, which I have done in the past, Ohio State, Alabama get the highest TV ratings by far. And then the next one up is usually Clemson and then Oklahoma. Notre Dame's still top 10, which is amazing and tells you how great the fan base is, because really, since Lou Holtz left, they've been irrelevant except for 1 year.
Okay.
So
how do you take a team that's been in the top 4 pretty much most of the year and finish the season undefeated and kick them out all of a sudden?
Oh, it's been done before. It was done a couple of years ago. I mean, TCU was ranked 4th, won their game, and dropped below Ohio State because Ohio State gets better ratings than anybody outside of Alabama. And you know what? It wouldn't be beyond me I wouldn't totally disbelieve somebody that said Ohio State was the biggest college football program in the country, because they are huge.
No,
it's them and Bama.
They're huge. Yeah.
And Notre Dame does not belong in the conversation with those guys until Notre Dame could get on a stage like this and at least win a game to get to a championship game. Because the last time we saw them in a championship game, they get beat, 45-14? It's 24-0 5 minutes into the game. So I don't believe Notre Dame is good enough to be in the top 4. I don't believe Notre Dame could beat UCF if Mackenzie Milton wasn't hurt. I just don't believe it. I mean, I've seen this enough that, and we've talked about it all year, that they were going to slip up somewhere and lose to somebody. They didn't. They came close against a bunch of teams that weren't that good, but they got through it. But when I look at this, Steve, Kyler Murray, Dwayne, I can't even remember his last name now, the quarterback for Ohio State, Tua and Jalen Hurts from Alabama, Clemson's quarterback Trevor Lawrence, all 4 of those teams have legit big-time quarterbacks. Notre Dame does not. They have Ian Book, who is a solid quarterback, but he's nowhere near those guys. And the biggest problem comes in all this is these teams have more playmakers, they have more speed, and when Notre Dame gets into this Final Four, it doesn't matter who they play in that Final Four, they're going to be run out of the gym because they don't have the athletes to compete. And when I look at this, if I want the 4 best teams in this, let's say Ohio State, Oklahoma, Alabama all win, I think it should be Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, and Ohio State. I think you'd have a much better Final Four. You would have teams that could compete with each other. You know, Ohio State doesn't have near the defense of the other teams, but it's possible they could put up 30 or 40 points on anybody and have a chance. Notre Dame cannot do that. Notre Dame's going to get humiliated by the time this is all done. I hope they don't, because I will be cheering for Notre Dame, but I haven't seen an athletic Notre Dame team since the early 90s.
Okay, but do we both agree that Notre Dame's not going to drop out of the top 4?
I don't know what's going to happen because nobody knows the actual formula they use or why they use it. So I would say I would find it hard to drop them. I don't think they should be dropped because I think the merit of an undefeated season puts them there. I'm just saying for competitive reasons, I would rather see Ohio State or Oklahoma than Notre Dame.
All right, so we're dealing fantasy football now.
No, we're not dealing in fantasy. We're dealing in reality. And
sure,
reality
it's fantasy.
Is this. Notre Dame's going to get destroyed. That's not a fantasy. It's just what's going to happen. If you watch Notre Dame play USC, do you really think USC would give a game to Oklahoma, Ohio State, Clemson, or Alabama? No, they're not. Alabama's going to have them down 30 at the end of the first quarter. It's fantasy land to think that this is the Notre Dame of Dan Devine and Aaron Parsegian and Newt Rockne, and that their program is as great as it ever was, because it's not. Brian Kelly is nowhere near the coach that Nick Saban is, or that Dabo Swinney is. So in the end, this is going to end badly for Notre Dame. I used to be a Notre Dame fan until they screwed Dan Devine over and got rid of Jerry Faust. But I just don't see how this ends any way other than a 28-point loss in the first round of the semifinals.
I can't dispute your game assessment, but I just can't look at that because that's not what's going to play out here. What's going to play out here
not,
is,
but the point of this
right.
four-team
So
tournament
I don't want to argue something. It's not arguable.
This is the thing. It's arguable. All right. I don't think it's arguable that they're not picking the four best teams at the end of the season. They're just picking the four teams that are popular, that have played well all season, and that's fine. But in the end, when I watch teams, like if Ohio State comes out and kicks Northwestern's butt, and Oklahoma blows out Texas, do you really have the four best teams? And this goes back to this. I don't think you could have a playoff system with just four teams because of this.
Right.
Because when you look at it, how many teams are ranked in the top four in the country going to the NCAA tournament, and they don't even make it to the Final Four? I mean, hell, last year you had the overall number one seed lost to a 16 seed.
But other than the powers that be in the NCAA offices in beautiful Washington Street in Indianapolis, US 40 right there on White River Parkway, who doesn't disagree with you? Nobody disagrees with you. Everybody in the world except for NCAA thinks there should be 8 to 16 teams playing for this and not 4.
Yeah, but see, this is where I think you miss. You get teams that get hot at the end of the year that look like they might be the best team, and it's just too late. I mean, everybody says college football is great because, like, every game's a playoff game. But I don't think, as an example, let's say Michigan, complete hypothetical. Michigan loses a close game to Notre Dame. Let's say week 3 they're playing Penn State. They go to Happy Valley and they lose by a point. But then they win their next 9 games and they beat Ohio State, which, you know, if you're a Michigan fan, that's extremely hypothetical now. But let's say they blow an undefeated number 1 ranked Ohio State out. Well, those 2 losses earlier in the year probably made it, so they're probably not going to be able to go higher than 5th or 6th, and they're not going to get in, and they might be the best team in the country at that point. So I think the NCAA tournament, the reason I like that, they let 64 in. You're not missing anybody that could possibly win it. And you get teams that we've seen it before where you get a Butler that makes a run to the finals, or you get a Villanova that wins a national championship as an 8 seed, where as the year went on, they got better. And at the end of the year, they really were the best team. They may have looked like an 8 seed because they're judging the entire season, but in the end, I want to see the team that is the best at the end of the year win the national championship.
Yeah, you're never going to get that necessarily with only allowing 4 teams to compete for it.
You'll never get that. I mean,
you'll never
the
get
perfect
it, right.
example was last year. Penn State and USC. You know, they both get hot, make a run, but neither one of them's getting in because they got 2 losses earlier in the season.
Right.
They end up playing in the Rose Bowl, or that was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Penn State, USC, both lost a couple games early. Penn State got beat like 49-10 to Michigan. But then Penn State comes out, beats 3 ranked teams. They beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game when Wisconsin was ranked 3rd or 4th. They beat Ohio State before that, and they don't make it. And when you watch them play USC, who had kind of a similar situation, those could have been the 2 best teams in the country that year, and we just don't know it because they weren't allowed in because at the start of the year they had some problems.
Yeah.
But I'm bored talking college football anyways now. You got anything else?
All right. Well, so just to say, look at this right now. This is all a prediction right now anyway. We'll find out tonight when they come it. I think I agree with the predictions here. It's going to be Georgia, Notre Dame, Clemson, and Alabama. I think Notre Dame is locked into the top 4 because they can't screw it up. And I don't know how you can drop them. Whether you think that they're worthy or not, they're in there. And I don't think you can drop a program with the stature of a Notre Dame out of the top 4, having done nothing for give you any reason to drop them if you kept them in there
So
all year long.
basically, you want to put them in there because, well, they weren't in the final top 4 until the last 4 weeks, but you want to give it to them basically because they're undefeated.
I think they will give it to them because they're undefeated.
Do you think they should?
Yes, I think they should, based on the ratings, the current rating systems they're using right now. Sure, yeah.
I don't even know that they use a rating system, but so my question.
Well, they've got a whole schematic and a flow chart. And
UCF, if they beat Memphis, will have 2 consecutive undefeated seasons that have never been rewarded.
For UCF to have a chance, Clemson and Georgia have to get obliterated.
I don't think UCF's got a chance anyways. I think they're going to use the
I don't
excuse.
either. I think for them to have a chance, I think losing their quarterback gave the NCAA and the select committee a reason to eliminate them. That was the red flag.
I think their one chance is this. Ohio State loses, Oklahoma loses, Georgia gets blown out.
Yeah. Basically, everybody's got to get beat.
Yeah, if those 2 lose and Georgia gets blown out, I think they could get in then. And then you got a hell of a story if they're doing it with their backup quarterback.
Right. Sure. Yeah, there's no doubt. So the other amazing thing, it took LSU 3 losses to get knocked out of contention.
Yeah, it took 7 overtimes and 74 points to knock them out, though.
Yeah, it did, but but it took 3 losses to get them out. So,
yeah. And really,
there's a team that
if they had one more game and they beat the Citadel or something, they'd jump them right back up in the top 10.
They might. But
I know. That's what
I don't
think
Alabama goes out no matter what. I think Alabama loses as long as it's not a 50-point blowout.
If they lose 28-10, they are not in. But they're not going to lose 28-10 to anybody. They're not going to lose to Georgia, but if they do, it's going to be a close game, and then they're just going to seed them number 3, and then go with it.
Then Notre Dame will have to play them in the semifinal game and get their ass handed to them.
The worst thing in the world that could ever happen to Notre Dame would be Alabama losing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the worst thing that could happen to Notre Dame is Alabama is for Alabama to get beat, because that would put them in the semifinals against Alabama, and they would have no chance. This way, they're going to at least have a chance to face Alabama in the championship game if they can get by Clemson.
Yeah, but they're not getting.
And I don't know if they can do that.
Clemson's going to beat the hell out of them.
It seems that way, but
no,
they're there. They're playing.
It's the way it'll be. But
that's why you roll the ball out and play the game.
All right, you wanted to talk a little NFL also?
No. Oh well, yeah.
You said you did. Jeez.
Yes, I did. I wasn't looking at the NFL. I was looking at it as, well, I guess it is the NFL. Yeah. Hang on just a second here. Let me get to that page real quick. Because what happened yesterday was one of my esteemed colleagues, a true genius and a contributing writer.
Probably the smartest man you've ever known, too, from what I've found out.
Well, he's a great football mind. I'll give him that. I mean, I will give him that. But wrote a really good article and posted on our website yesterday that has gotten rave reviews and a lot of attention. And I thought, because it's a written article, and I don't know how many times people come to our website to read, they'd rather hear you and I banter back and forth about incessantly stupid stuff. But wrote an article called Marvin Lewis Era, Cincinnati's Marvin Lewis Era, and Mike Brown's Making the Fools Out of Cincinnati Bengals and the City of Cincinnati. It was written by my esteemed colleague, Mike Goodpaster. It was very well written. And what I just thought I'd do is, for those of you who don't take the time to read the articles, which you really should do, because we do have a lot of great contributing writers on our webpage. And not everything is just vocal. A lot of times you got to actually sit down and read an article. You'll probably learn a lot more by reading than listening to us, two idiots. But I looked at this, Mike, as your article, and I know you're a Cincinnati fan. I know you live in that area, and it's a team you followed throughout your career, and you live and breathe with that team, much like I live and breathe with the Colts. We get it. We're all fans of our own franchises and teams around us. But I see this more as an article, and I took from it more, this is kind of what the NFL teams do to cities in general. In some shape or form, they all kind of do the same thing. Now, where you get the difference is you get some owners who are a little more akin to being smart enough to be good representatives about their franchise to the city, and you got some that are not. In this case, I think Mike Brown and the Brown family is definitely not somebody who endears their heart to the town of Cincinnati. So what I thought I would do is just let you go through the article and talk a little bit about it. And again, the title of the article is Mike Brown is Making Fools Out of Cincinnati and Bengals Fans in the City of Cincinnati. Why is that happening?
It happens because, number one, a fan is a fanatic. And the one way to tell that somebody doesn't know anything about football is when they talk about their team and their team's losing, the first thing they do is blame the quarterback.
Sure.
I mean, that's what they do. I mean,
But he gets paid well to take the blame.
Yeah, but the thing is this. What people don't understand is for the quarterback to be successful, the offensive line's got to be good, the wide receivers have to be good, the play calling has to be good. But most importantly, and you've talked about this, a lot of teams have owners that have fleeced the city. You know, we're going to move if you don't give me what I want. They give what they want.
Mm-hmm. Every team does it.
The difference here, though, the Bengals pay for almost nothing. They hooked the city of Cincinnati, guys like Bob Bettinghouse and them, who then became – see, this is the thing. When they got this passed through city council, a lot of these politicians later on, when they weren't politicians anymore, worked for the Bengals. So I guarantee you there was payoffs there. Mike Brown.
Well, talk about the stadium deal. You go into some detail in here about the stadium deal. Talk about the stadium deal. Pull up your article and just recite it.
I don't have to pull it up. I know enough about the stadium deal because it's bothered me since the day that they did it. And, I mean, this was in the mid-'90s, and I remember in the 90s is what Bengals fans called a lost decade. They were terrible. Stupid draft picks, all this. So Hamilton County had Riverfront Stadium. Mike Brown starts complaining.
Been to Riverfront several times.
Yeah, and
great
the lopsided. It was the most lopsided deal in public stadium financing project history. And I didn't get that from my own words. I got that from the Wall Street Journal in an article that was written 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, they've even had to cancel planned property tax rollbacks in order to service their debt in the past.
I saw that.
The cost of the stadium by 2026 is going to be over $1 billion. And this was a stadium.
How much of the money did the Bengals put up to build the stadium?
I think the Bengals have put $1 million or $2 million of that $1.1 billion in.
That's it.
Yeah, this is the greatest sweetheart deal anybody has ever gotten.
Is there a revenue sharing plan with the city, or did the Bengals keep the revenue?
Bengals keep all revenue. Bengals keep.
Wow.
This is the thing. They wanted to build a concert venue on the banks down next to Paul Brown Stadium. It takes away a parking lot where fans go to tailgate. So to be able to do this, the city had to make a deal to buy 15 acres of property close by the stadium. I think it's called the Hilltop or something. But 15 acres. They bought it, gave it to the Bengals, and now the Bengals are allowed to develop it and put parking on it. But the thing is this. With the concert venue, the Bengals will make money off the ticket. The Bengals make money off everything here. They make money off concessions, parking. They get everything. On top of that, after I wrote this article, I actually talked to somebody that's in the infrastructure in Hamilton County and found out that the Bengals also receive, on average, $2.5 to $3 million a year from the city of Cincinnati for operating cost. So
now, to give you a perspective, Hamilton County, I assume that's the county seat of the proper town of Cincinnati. Yeah. Like Marion County is Indianapolis, Hamilton County is Cincinnati, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was eye-opening to me was you said that now, more than a decade after it opened, stadium costs make up 16.4% of the entire county's budget.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the county of Hamilton County, which owns, operates, and runs the city of Cincinnati, Ohio, the Queen City.
Yeah.
So almost, a fifth of that almost is going to take care of the Bengals.
Yeah.
So 16 cents on every tax dollar coming in is going directly to fund and take care of the Bengals.
Yeah. And it'll be like that.
Seriously.
For many more years.
Yeah, so at least 2026.
Yeah.
At which time the Bengals will threaten to leave.
Well, this is the thing. The only way the Bengals can leave in 2026 is they file a breach of contract. So if at any point the city doesn't pay them what they're supposed to pay them, then they can do this all again. And the one good thing about this is I think there's less and less places that are going to be willing to ante up what these people are basically being held hostage for now. If you look at it, the move to LA for the Chargers has been a huge catastrophe.
Right. But San Diego said, sorry, we're not taking your deal. Goodbye.
Yeah. And
they let him go.
This,
no. Yeah, and they didn't. It's been a catastrophe for the Chargers, basically.
Yeah.
They're playing in some 25, 30,000 seat soccer stadium.
Well,
for the next 2 years.
Is this, San Diego voters rejected a referendum to grant the Chargers several $100 million of taxpayer money to build that stadium. So since the taxpayers wouldn't pay it, they're going to move. And the thing is this, I think that the cost for them to move was like $30 or $40 million. They weren't,
right.
and I think what I read was Alex Spanos, who's the owner, had told them that he needed hundreds of millions of dollars for the stadium because he only had $20 million of his own money to put into the stadium. But then he takes $30 or $40 million to move the team.
Right. And, they had a report on this out here in L.A. just very recently that still well over 50% of the fan base of the Los Angeles Chargers now have San Diego addresses.
Yeah.
They're not endeared in Los Angeles at all.
No. I mean, it's not LA's team. I mean, if you're an
LA
fan,
it's not LA's team
you think the Rams are, because the Los Angeles Chargers existed in the early 60s. The Los Angeles Rams, existed in the early mid-90s. And
right.
Even back then, I remember in the 70s, they'd play playoff games and block off the top area because they could only sell 70,000 seats then. If you look at Las Vegas has already pledged $750 million towards the nearly $2 million price tag on a new facility in Las Vegas.
Yeah, well, that's gambling money. That's easy to come by for those guys.
But it's still $750 million in taxpayers' money. And that's a problem because in Vegas, they didn't vote on this. Some places they have to vote, sometimes they don't. So this is basically, you're paying for this team, whether you want this team or not.
Right.
And let's face it, in Cincinnati, the amount of events that are held in Cincinnati, usually have the 10 Bengal games, counting preseason games. Then you'll have maybe a concert or two. Maybe it'll throw a soccer game there, a UC Bearcat game. The facility's not even used 20 times a year. So there is no way from now, or from the start of this deal around the turn of the century to 2026, there's no way you're making even a decent percentage of that $1.1 billion back. I mean, because it's been proven by all these studies that NFL teams, Major League Baseball teams, do not impact the economy that much.
Okay, so now Cincinnati has they have Great American Park, that's solely baseball, right?
Yeah.
And so what is this Bengals? It's Paul Brown Stadium, right? So are they kind of cutting the same deal with Great American Park with the Reds too?
No. I mean, I don't think the Reds have near that deal. And the reason I don't think that is because I've never looked into it because nobody's even brought it up. So I don't think the deal's anywhere near what the Bengals deal is. Because if it was, maybe the Reds would go get some players instead of just saying they're too big to do it.
I didn't want this to be about personnel as much as I did about the whole concept of how these owners. So how does Mike Brown get away with this? I mean, he's got a mediocre football team that has performed admirably in the regular season the last 9 years under Marvin Lewis, and of course they're going to tank big time now with Hugh Jackson on board. They'll become the new Browns of Ohio. But how does he get away with this year in and year out? When does Cincinnati say enough is enough?
They don't, because it's just the way it is. I mean, these.
So basically,
he can do what he wants. They got a blank check, and the thing is this. Actually, from looking at it, the Reds got a sweetheart deal too. I mean, actually, the only stadium deal that costs more to taxpayers was the deal in New York. And there's a big difference between New York and Cincinnati.
Yeah, big difference. So is Cincinnati big enough to hold the Bengals?
What do you mean?
I mean, they seem desperate to keep them, so much so that they're giving away the farm. I mean, is Cincinnati just so desperate to keep the Bengals in town because they don't have anything more than 20 events to host there. I mean, like Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis is used weekly. They're having a tractor pull there, or a wrestling match, or a fireman's show, or there's conventions in that building almost every weekend of the year.
Yeah, but see, this is the thing. The Indianapolis Colts, when they got that stadium, I don't think were threatening to move. And what you had in the mid-'90s, you had a climate where you had Baltimore, who was willing to do anything for a team. You had St. Louis. You had Los Angeles because they just lost the Rams. You go 1995, you got all three of these places bidding to move teams. So you got Baltimore, who was playing Cincinnati and Cleveland against each other. The Bengals used Baltimore as leverage to get the vote approved to get their stadium deal. Because if it wouldn't have been approved, if that stadium vote would have been voted down, the Cincinnati Bengals would have become the Baltimore Bengals. The Cleveland Browns would have had to stay in Cleveland, but then Cleveland would have probably moved to L.A. So what you had at that time was you had three cities desperate and willing to do anything to get a team. So when you throw that in, then, you know, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Cleveland Browns have people over a barrel. You know, then you kind of got a gun to their head negotiating, which makes it a lot easier to get your own way. Whereas if you did it today, I don't think there's as many cities out there that are as excited about bringing an NFL team to them. Because when you look at it...
Well, not at that cost.
No, not at that cost. And
right.
Most of these cities, if you look back on it, because a lot of these cities, you know, ended up building new stadiums, especially mid-'90s to early 2000s, because of these threats. And I don't think that you'll find that any of them were really a good deal or profitable for the community. The deal with Indianapolis is you basically had the NCAA pushing for that too. So you had more than just a football team. You had the NCAA. You had, I mean, the amateur sports capital of this country is probably Indianapolis, Indiana. I mean,
now it is, sure. But the NCAA moving there,
and it has been for a long time. I mean, if you look at it, even in 1987, the Pan Am Games was in Indianapolis. So
I actually worked the Pan Am Games in '87.
Yeah. So Oscar Schmidt tore us up in the gold medal game, but I think when you look at that, Indianapolis went at it as it was more than just the NFL deal. It was the NCAA deal. There was a lot more stuff involved there. They didn't get hosed the way the city of Cincinnati did. The city of Cincinnati, just like the city of Baltimore, were all basically held hostage. I think that's the difference between then and now.
Two things here. I want to say one thing. And the other thing, too, is a lesson maybe for Mike Brown. I got to give Jim Irsay credit. And all I know is Indianapolis. You know, because I don't even know who owns the Rams anymore. I don't know. You know, probably some Japanese corporation, most likely. They own about everything else out here. But Irsay has been pretty benevolent to the city. I mean, he does the right things. He pushes the right buttons. Like, there's more times than not, he'll lend his jet to fly a kid that needs surgery somewhere. He'll do the right PR moves, and you know, he'll give away free tickets. And he comes on, he tweets out a trivia question every week for free tickets, free parking, free sitting in the owner's box, or something like that. He plays the city well and gives back, PR-wise, back to the city. So Mike Brown doesn't really do any of that.
Well, see, I think this, though, when you look at Jim Irsay, you had his dad, who was
a jerk,
a miserable human being, but he saw that the way his dad treated the city of Baltimore is why the city of Baltimore never gave him a new stadium, which is why they ended up in Indianapolis. So I'm thinking there, as he saw what his dad did, and he knew it didn't work, and he is at least smart enough when not inebriated to do the opposite. The problem you have with Mike Brown is Paul Brown ran this team exactly like Mike Brown. The difference
but he was football smart.
Paul Brown was a football genius. I mean, Paul Brown could run. If he was alive today, this team would have probably been to a couple more Super Bowls. None of this crap would have ever went on. But the problem is, Mike Brown says, well, my dad did it this way. I know as much as my dad. You don't. You just don't. Your dad was a football genius. You're just a little pathetic, shriveled up man. That's it. He played quarterback at Dartmouth, I think, so he did play football before. But he's just a pathetic human being. He is fine with basically stealing money from the city of Cincinnati, which the city of Cincinnati and their city council was completely in bed with. And in the end, the only people to get screwed are the city. And the thing is this, if the man would do the right thing and attempt to win, nobody would care about the stadium deal. If you had a team here that was competitive where you thought you could win the Super Bowl, yeah, people would still be upset about it, but nobody's really going to worry about it.
Okay, good. Let me hold you right there, because one more point I want to make is, then I want to get into the second part. You just parlay this into the second part of this, which is going to be about Mike Brown and how controlling he is over Marvin Lewis, and why Marvin Lewis may not be as bad a coach as people wanted to believe he is. But before I ask that, let me finish off the first part with this question to you. How in the world does the city of Cincinnati justify doing what they're doing and giving what they're giving to the Bengals? How do they justify it? Because they're getting none of the revenues from the stadium, none of the revenues from the game. Are they just banking entirely off the economic impact of the NFL franchise being in their city?
I don't think anybody can do that anymore, because I think it's been proven the economic impact is not that big a deal. I think what it is this. If you took the Pacers and the Colts out of Indianapolis, and you took the Bengals and the Reds out of Cincinnati, they would just be two cities that nobody cared about.
Well, in Indianapolis, as long as they have the NCAA, they're going to be fine.
Yeah, but they wouldn't.
That's always,
because without those two professional teams, it's gone.
Right.
And still, even with the NCAA, that's just events. That's not a team. And to be considered a major city, you got to have one of the major 3 or 4 sports out there.
I agree.
You got to have a team. And
I agree.
It's not true, but it is the perception of people. So if there's no Bengals or Reds here, and there's no Colts or Pacers there, these are just two middling cities in the middle of the world with bad weather.
Right. The one's got a dome stadium. We eliminate the bad weather being a factor.
But they wouldn't have a dome stadium, because this is the thing. If Peyton Manning doesn't get drafted in '98 by the Indianapolis Colts, I believe the Indianapolis Colts would have been in L.A. by the early 2000s.
Yeah, but we already had a dome stadium when Manning got drafted.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, though, because that stadium was already considered outdated. And you also got to remember this. Most Colts games were blacked out in Indianapolis because there was not a huge fan base. The team had just got there in '84. They drew all right that first year. They had the playoff year in '87 when they lost to the Browns in the divisional playoff. But it's not like they were highly successful. And you get into the 90s, I think the year they made the playoff run to the championship game, they were 8-7 playing the Patriots on a Sunday night. And I remember watching that game, and they said this is the first game that's been sold out, a week ahead of time this season. So I think that team was, after the little period with Harbaugh where they were really good, if you would have put Ryan Leaf in that situation, that team would have been done. They'd have been in L.A. because there was already rumblings in the late 90s that, they needed a nicer stadium with more luxury boxes, because it was the 90s.
And Indianapolis ponied up right away.
Well,
yeah,
no, they
Indy
didn't.
Ponied up right away.
They ponied up in the early 2000s. What
okay,
I'm
well,
saying
that
is
process
this, without the success of 1999,
it takes a long time to get that done.
Yeah, without the playoffs, if that would have been a 3-13, 4-12 team, I think they'd have been in L.A. I just think in the end, Peyton Manning saved that franchise. Has nothing to do with winning a Super Bowl. It was just that he made that franchise relevant. They weren't relevant.
That's why you'll find most Indianapolis people think that Peyton Manning is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, because he basically saved the Colts from leaving Indianapolis. I agree with that. I agree with the assessment. I still think Peyton's a great quarterback. I still will go down as one of the 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 best quarterbacks of all time. But his genuine contribution to the city was he saved the Colts in the city of Indianapolis.
No doubt. There was not, this, you lived in Indianapolis. 1997, there's no big, huge fan base. There's nobody all jacked up about going to the Colts game. I remember going to
season tickets.
But then. There was a lot of, put it like this, if you went to a Colts game the last 10 or 15 years, I guarantee you there was a lot less opposing team jerseys than what you saw previous. Because, the perfect example is, I think the Bengals played in Indy in, 97. I went to that game, and I went to the game they played in 87. Both of those games, there was more Bengals fans than Colts fans in the stadium, especially the 87 game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had a very dark period there. Yeah, and there was always the fear that we were going to lose them because Irsay's were. And I don't know they were threatening, I'm not saying I can ever say that Irsay's threatened. The offers just were presented out there. Maybe that's the way the Irsays were playing it at that point in time. Was that, hey, we don't need to threaten you. We're just going to let you hear. We're gonna release the offers that are out there and let the rumors fly.
Yeah,
to
and
scare
you had
you
LA
rather than
at the time.
threaten you.
Yeah, and
LA was craving a football team, and the NFL wanted a franchise in LA. I mean, they brought the Raiders down for a while. That failed. People were going to San Diego to watch football.
They didn't want the Raiders there. That was Al Davis, if you remember, because Al Davis actually had to sue the NFL to move to LA, but they had the Rams there until '94, I think. And then the Rams moved to St. Louis in '95.
St. Louis.
And then they got desperate thinking they needed a team there. So 20 years later, they give LA 2 teams. But
I don't know whether they were really overall in favor. I mean, so San Diego, and I want to get back to the Bengals here in just a second, but to close it up. The San Diego move, is that one of those deals where the owner scratched each other's back, where I don't know that it was anybody saw San Diego coming to LA as a good move. Certainly the city of LA didn't see it. I mean, they'll say, well, we'll take you. We'll put you in a soccer stadium. You don't get to share the Coliseum with the Rams. You're not going to do that because you're not going to draw enough for us to even open the damn building up on every Sunday. It's an expensive place to run.
Well, I think this. I think Stan Kroenke is there. Yeah, I think is it Kroenke or Spanos? Spanos, I think, is the Chargers. He is not the greatest guy out in the world. And I think that he overstepped his bounds by forcing the vote to see if they would be or if they could get a new stadium. When that backfired for him, he was pretty much screwed. So then he's forced into a corner.
Okay, no.
And I still think it's real possible they end up right back in San Diego.
Oh, I do too. I think they're going to stick around one more year and give the stadium deal a shot, because the stadium's supposed to open not next season but the season after. So it'll be 2020, 21 season.
Yeah.
That's when that stadium's scheduled to be open. And I think he'll give it a year or maybe even 2 years there, but I know that the Chargers tickets are not selling because they're doing the seat licensing now out here, and they're offering all these packages. And the ticket variation in prices between the Chargers and the Rams is unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like the Clippers and the Lakers. I mean, you can sit on the front row for a Clippers game in Staples for $1,000. It's $5,000 to sit there for a Lakers game.
Well, it's kind of the same thing. The Lakers had been there forever. The Clippers weren't there until, the mid to late 70s. They moved from Buffalo, I think it was.
Was it Buffalo, the Braves, or the old Braves?
I think so. I'm not 100. Don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure
I think that's right.
And it was around 77 or 78. It's the same thing here. You had a Chargers team in the early 60s, but the LA Rams have been in LA since the early 40s. They had a 50-year history. You had a history of guys like, Roman Gabriel, a lot of legends, Jack Youngblood, guys like that. There's no history, really, for the Chargers in LA.
Isn't that the deal where Frontieri, and I don't think it was Irsay, but the Frontieri, isn't the Baltimore and the Rams owners trade teams at some point in time?
No. That was actually, there used to be a team in Cleveland called the Rams, and then that team moved to L.A. And then the Cleveland Browns came through the old AAFC.
Did Frontieri own the Rams?
Yeah, Georgia Frontieri owned it after her husband passed away, and then she's the one that moved them to St. Louis in the mid-'90s.
St. Louis. Okay. All right. I may be fabricating. All right, now let's get back to your article. It's a very well-written article. And again, I want to really encourage everybody who's listening to this show, take the time to go find this article on the Grilling Truth and read it, because it's really good. Mike's got a lot of good links in here that we're not even touching that gives you some more in depth, and it really puts a perspective onto how these packages work, and how these teams have such staying power over the cities because of the fact that the limited expansion the NFL wants to do and keep their the supply lower than the demand, demand greater supply. It's a really good article. But the second part, now I'm going to let you rant, okay? Because now you get into talking about Mike Brown. So and you get into here talking about Mike Brown doesn't care about you. Tell us why he doesn't care about us.
Because he doesn't. Because they're basically the people of Hamilton County are paying for his stadium.
Right.
And he doesn't attempt to win. I mean, this was a team in 2015. If Dalton doesn't get hurt, might have been the best team in the NFL. even with him getting hurt, they had a chance. But in the end, he's kept a coach for 16 years that hasn't won a playoff game. He's let guys like Andrew Whitworth go. I mean, Andrew Whitworth went to the Rams, and they went from one of the worst offensive lines to one of the best. The Bengals become one of the worst. But you got to let your coach coach. And I have no respect for Marvin Lewis. I know what he's up against. He's got an owner that makes the final decisions. But to me, if you're really a head football coach and you don't have any control and you're getting your ass beat and you're just going to sit there and take it, I think that's pathetic. I mean, at some point around year 4 or 5, he should have just come out and had a press conference and said, guys, I'm leaving because I don't want this to be the last job I ever get, no matter how long I keep it, because nobody will hire me after I get done with this, because this man.
But wouldn't you thought about that about Hugh Jackson? He's hired the next week by the Bengals.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I don't know if that's Mike Brown's decision or Marvin Lewis's decision. And the thing is this, the other player that I know this happened from talking to a couple former players, Chad Johnson, if you remember him, Ocho Cinco, great player for a few years until his head became too big for him. But Marvin Lewis wanted to get rid of him around 2008. And the story goes that in the playoff game in 2005, when Carson Palmer got hurt, in the locker room, because he wasn't getting enough balls thrown at him, that him and Hugh Jackson, who was the wide receivers coach, actually got in a fist fight at halftime. From there on, everything kind of spiraled with Chad Johnson. And the story I hear is Marvin Lewis wanted to get rid of Chad Johnson around 2008. 2009, and he was told by Mike Brown no. When you get down to it, and I know we brought this up on shows before, talking about Jerry Jones and Mike Brown, and it's just the fact that if the players know you can't release them, they don't respect you. You know, I don't have to listen to you.
They have no fear of you.
Yeah, because in the end, the guy above you is making the final decisions, not you. And when you look at him stand on the sideline, same thing with Jason Garrett. They stand there and they clap all the time. Nobody ever gets pissed off. I swear to God, as God is my witness, Steve, if my team played the way the Bengals had the last month, I would have went completely ape crap on everybody. The whole world would have known it. Because I want people to know that I have some pride in the product I put on that field. And when I just sit there and clap my hands, and then I come to the press conference on Monday after getting blown out by a bad Browns team, and my first quote is, I was happy with the effort in the first half, and you're down 35-7, you're a pathetic excuse for a coach. I mean, Marvin Lewis is sitting here just cashing checks. It's the only thing he's doing right now. Mike Brown
But what do
allows
you
it.
do? What do you do when you're a prestigious head coach, you've got tenure, you're making, Lewis has got to be making what, $3, $4, $5 million a year, I would think, at least.
He's making plenty of money.
Plenty of money. And then you go into a whole section here with 5 paragraphs on controlling coaches. What do you do here? I mean, because you're kind of almost in this part of the article, you're almost talking about like it's really not Marvin Lewis's fault, other than he's not man enough to walk away from it.
What I'm saying is this: it's Marvin Lewis's
fault.
I
don't know if I'd walk away from $5 million a year either.
Well,
I might just sit there and take it if you're going to leave him stay there.
You know what?
Jason Garrett, I'll be coaching the Cowboys as long as you pay me well.
Yeah,
but it's your team.
My thing is this.
Just don't fire me.
And so what I see here then is people like that to me are just not competitive people. And I just don't understand why you would not be competitive. If it's me, I don't care if I'm playing Monopoly against my sons when they're 6 and 8. If I don't win, I'm going to be upset because I want to win. Plus, they're only 6 and 8. I should be smarter than them. But when I look at this, what I see overall is the team reflects the character and the attitude of the coach. And what I see here is this. When everything's going great, this team's flying around having fun. As soon as something goes wrong, everybody drops their head and says, here we go again. So, in the end, I blame Marvin Lewis because he's put up with it for 16 years. And in 2011, I wrote in the article, and I got the link there showing it, that one of the reasons he stayed in 2011 is because Mike Brown decided he would let him make decisions on what players were active for the game on game day.
Active and inactive, yeah.
So why couldn't Marvin Lewis have just said, hey, you can be the GM, but I got final say on who plays in the game, And I want final say on who gets drafted. Because I'm sorry, the most successful Bill Belichick's got final say, and you can say, yeah, he won all this, that's why, but he had that final say as soon as he got to New England. And the thing is this: we can talk about the money, but if somebody wants me to coach their team, the first thing I want to know is, do I have control of everything here? Can I get the players I want here, or do I have to let you control it and let my success be dependent on whether you're, apt at doing what you're doing? Because the problem is this: the constant here is not Marvin Lewis, it's not Andy Dalton, it wasn't Carson Palmer. The constant is this team has sucked since 1991, and the only constant in this whole thing is Mike Brown. So in the end, if you're a Bengals fan and you're blaming Andy Dalton or Marvin Lewis or the offensive line, you're just wrong and you're stupid. Because this all comes to Mike Brown. And I see a post this morning on social media which is like, do you guys think Jeff Driscoll could get us to the playoffs? And I clicked the comment. I said, if he's going to be the owner and head coach. Because in the end, the only way this is ever going to work is to have an owner that will get a GM, that will hire a head coach, and that owner lets that GM and head coach do their job. It's how it works every place that's successful. You don't have Robert Kraft making decisions. I think he did make a decision with Garoppolo. But other than that, every decision in that organization has been Bill Belichick's. So if you're Marvin Lewis and you're willing to put up with this, and you're willing to stand there with that sad sack look on your face like, I can't help it, I'm just getting beat up, you get what you deserve. And if you're a Bengals fan and you go pay $30 to park, $10 for a beer, $8 for a Sprite, $80 to $100 for a ticket, and you got 3 kids and you want to take them, you just blew $600, and you gave it to Mike Brown. And Mike Brown gets enough money. He doesn't need yours. And no, I don't think a boycott gets Mike Brown's attention, because I don't think anything will. But if you have any respect for yourself as a person, you don't go support it. And it doesn't mean you're not a fan of the team. I think, to me, it's kind of like when people say, if you don't love this country, you can leave it. I think this country was built on, if you don't love this country, you can always try to change it. And it's not love it or leave it. It's love it or you try to make a change. And with Bengal fans, as long as you keep putting money in this guy's pocket and 50,000 people show up, he's going to be good with it. Now, if 10,000
what's
people
the stadium
show up,
hold?
It holds 60,000 or
Do they sell out?
66,000. No, they don't.
Not
They've changed the blackout rule to where you got to sell 80% of the tickets. And the fact is this: when they played Cleveland, there's probably 25,000 Browns fans there. When they played the Steelers, there was probably 30,000 Steelers fans there. So overall, though, I think
when they play the Colts, there's probably 20,000 Colts fans that come down too.
Not really, but no, the Colts fans don't travel like Steelers. No fans travel like Steelers fans.
They don't want to sit outside.
Nobody travels. Oh,
dome.
yeah, because I got friends that are Colts fans that, oh, man, we'd come down to the game, but it's so cold at those games.
Yeah, no way. I'm not sitting outside.
But no, I would say 2013 is the last time I had season tickets. The Bengals played the Colts that year, and there was probably 5, maybe 10,000 Colts fans there. But right now, if the Bengals played the Colts, there would probably be more Colts fans in there than Bengals fans, because Bengal fans have no hope. Colts fans have some hope. So, but when both teams are solid, like then, it's Bengals fans, Colts fans, about the same. If you're a Bengals fan, there's a real good chance you live in Cincinnati. And if you're a Colts fan, there's a real good chance you live in Indianapolis. There are fans outside of that, but not a lot.
Sure. No, it's not. Yeah. Mostly the remaining fans, and there now are some Luck fans, or there's a player fan. If you're outside of Indianapolis and you're a Colts fan, you're more likely a Manning fan or a Luck fan or something like that.
Yeah. And if you're a Bengals fan outside of Cincinnati, you were probably a Chad Johnson fan at one point.
Chad Johnson fan, or maybe even an Andy Dalton fan, because I'm an Andy Dalton fan.
Yeah.
I like Andy Dalton as a quarterback.
Most Bengal fans aren't smart enough to think the same way. But, Steve, if you got nothing else, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up today. But I want to remind people, Indiana plays Duke tonight at 9:30. approximately 10 to 15 minutes after the game, myself, Steve Risley, Colin Hartman will be on to break down the game for our post-game show, the Indiana-Duke game. And if you want to catch a little Indiana-Duke preview, the three of us were honored enough to have Yogi Ferrell from the Sacramento Kings on the show last night to talk a little bit about his career at IU and then to talk about the Duke game a little bit. I want to remind you guys, if you have any questions for us, you can send them at Grueling Truth or at The Grueling Truth on Twitter. You can also find us on Facebook, Survive and Advance, or The Grueling Truth, also Indiana Basketball Weekly. So make sure you check those out there. Steve, you got anything final to add?
Those Twitter pages are Grueling Hoops, at Grueling Hoops for the Indiana Basketball Twitter page, and Survive the Magic for Survive and Advance, at Survive the Magic. Unfortunately, Survive and Advance was already taken, and anything to do with Indiana Hoops was already taken. There's so many Twitter pages already dedicated to that. Or you can go to SRisley34, and we'll collect all your questions, answer them about anything. Thank you for joining us. Mike, great article. I really want to applaud you. Very well-written article, and I really encourage people. We only touched on the article. You really should go read it because Mike put a lot of research into this. It's well worth a read on how owners in general will abuse and take advantage of cities and counties and teams and fans to profit off of the city to keep their football teams very profitable. And every team's worth over $1 billion. Most of them are worth over $2 billion. So, and like Irsay in case Indianapolis, he has no other vocation other than president and CEO of the Colts. That's his income. He's not. His dad had a construction business. He doesn't. So these guys make a living off this. They're making a living off of you.
All right, Stevie. They're not making a living off me no more. Gotta stop going.
There you go.
So remember, tomorrow around noon, grillingtruth.net. You can hear me and Steve again on Survive in Advance. Don't know what the topic will be, but we'll have a good one by the time we get there. So once we put our heads together, something will pop out.
I've got a good idea.
I'll tell you what it is. What?
I think we're gonna review our predictions on the college football playoffs. Then why don't we go ahead and just kind of make some midseason predictions on NFL awards?
Well, we can do that. So we
will. Who we
do
think
that
MVP,
tomorrow.
Coach of the Year, Player of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, Rookies of the Year.
But,
maybe who's on the hot seat coaching wise right now that's already been fired. We'll do a show on that tomorrow. How about that? Along with kind of following up on our predictions.
All right, so we got a little college football, a little NFL football tomorrow, and who knows what else happens in between that can be added in. So make sure you check us out tomorrow at noon on thegruelingtruth.net. Remember, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, pretty much wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.